Well, hello there, humans, bees, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough to be doing it too. I am Bushka on Blitz, and it gives me great joy today to be bringing you a look at the ultimate in Tier 9 Retro. This is the M46 Patton. It's a tank that has a long and storied history for me. It's a tank that I drove an awful lot with Snake Eyes and Chapos and Aegon and all the boys back in the day in Grump, in those salad days when we were young and so naive. It is a tank that has a lot going for it, but for all that, it's a tank that is tremendously fragile. And I'm going to show you quite a few games. I'm going to show you some Tier 10 matchups, predominantly to show you that the way I play it at Tier 9 and Tier 10 is not tragically different. It is pretty much the same playstyle. And it's a tank that people don't seem to realise. It can be super effective, but it suffers a lot from user error, don't we all? I suffer a lot from user error on a daily basis. This is a tank that has fantastic damage numbers. It's got a lovely 350 alpha gun, which allows it to do a little bit of the hit point trading game. And it also has gorgeous mobility. It can get around the traps very, very nicely. And more than that, it's a tank that looks the goods. I mean, have a look at it. It's a very sexy tank. It's got that svelte, swept back turret, very, very thin. And it's got a lot of chutzpah in terms of historical value as well. A lot of people love this tank because it does have a profile outside of World of Tanks Blitz that is quite well known. What it doesn't have is armour. It's got crap armour. He says, bouncing a shot from a Leopard 1. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. And that Leopard 1 is very much in the focus for us right now because it's a tank that kind of plays like a Tier 9 version of the Leopard 1 with less mobility. It's a funny way to point the playstyle out, but if I had to pick one tank at Tier 10 that you play this tank in the same vein as, it would be the Leopard 1, because everyone can pen you. Even Tier 8s can pen you with standard ammunition, and indeed some Tier 10 tanks can pen you with high explosives. Some Tier 9 tanks can probably get through with HE if you're looking at different parts of the battlefield. I mean, your butt is typically American. It's very, very thin, very narrow grill between you and the bad guys, and so you're going to cop a flogging. But you have gun depression. You have gun depression, you have a 350 alpha shell, and you have mobility. Now, if you use those three things together, you can be very, very good. Now, does it sound like any other tank that you might be thinking of? Like the Leopard 1. The Leopard 1 at Tier 10 has gun depression. It has a 350 alpha gun, and it has mobility. It does a lot more damage. It has 540 more damage per minute than the M46 Patton, and it has a lot more pen and a lot more accuracy. But for all that, the Patton has one more degree of gun depression, and although it doesn't have the lights out nitro mobility of the Leopard 1, it's got just the same kind of armor profile. So you learn with this tank very, very quickly to reset your camouflage. It is such a meat and potatoes tank. If you reset that camo, if you work your hills, your ridges, and your angles, you can make hay. What you can't do is be super aggressive. This is no T-54. This is no E50. You're not looking to run and ram. You're not looking to get low to the ground and come out from behind the shoulders and pump people. You're looking to be canny with your hit point pool. You're looking to be aggressive when you can DPM people out and you want to hit point trade. I mean, look at this. There's an E100 there. I'm waiting. I've loaded up APCR. I'm going to get that shot. And I'm going to come back and reset my camo. And I'm working the numbers. I'm doing the things that are going to allow me to farm damage and be successful in a Tier 9 medium in a Tier 10 match. I can see there's a Jaegeroo over there camping things. There's that E100 again. Why am I going out slightly sideways there? Well, he's going to pen me anyway if he gets me. But if you spot and you drive out, you won't see people until the port on the front of your tank actually clears. And that can mean that you're driving out sideways and you're driving out at an angle and it's hard to actually get backwards and forwards quickly. Whereas if you drive out sideways and you're already pulling back, your gun might never actually see the other tank. You might not even get that gun out there, but you will spot that tank. And I wasn't really trying to get the shot off. I was just trying to see if he was looking at me. So we're going to lose this match, right? I'm going to ruin it for you. We're going to lose this match. We're going to run out of humans. And we did go to the flank in an M46 Patton, and we don't have a lot of choice in that. And it's a tier 10 game, so you have certain vagaries of tier 10. There's just nothing you can do about that. You don't have great pen. You're going to struggle with your penetration on these tier 10 tanks. So you've got to make sure your positional play is outstanding, and you've got to work and find a balance between super aggression and just generally being solid. And that's a hard thing to do, you know, at this tier, and you're not always going to get it right. No one does. Even the very best humans that have played the game, they still struggle to actually make no errors in games. Like, it's very, very easy to fall over and ruin things. And especially in a tank like this, when you suddenly just find yourself bleeding and there's a Leopard 1 behind us, and what are you going to do? You got a Leopard 1 behind us, you got a 183 and a grill in front of you, there's a T-95 there. You don't have a lot of options. You're screwed. You've run out of time, and you probably should have been a little more aggressive, but it seemed like you were getting shots and the Leopard 1 disappeared off the map, and that's fine. Be a little forgiving with yourself. This tank is not a tank that's going to dominate tier 10 by rolling forward and doing massive amounts of damage. It needs to work the numbers. It needs to take shots that are good shots. It needs to have time on target to actually do the business. And that's all there is to it. You can't help that. If you let the tank work, it will work for you, and it will work very, very well indeed. Now, talking about numbers, let's break them down just a touch. The gun is the most interesting thing on the tank. You're a 105mm T5E1 M2 gun. Now, 105mm means you do 350 alpha, which is just grand. 350 alpha is a really important number. At tier 9 and tier 8, 350 alpha is enough to make you a legitimate peek-a-boom threat, especially when you're able to throw out 8.67 rounds per minute when you're pushed. But the struggle is real in terms of pen. 218mm of penetration on your AP rounds, or a paltry 265 on your APCR, means that you would think this tank would really not be able to get the business done. But you absolutely can belt and flog in this tank. As you can see in these games, I'm having no qualms putting out damage. And the reason is I know how to play the bloody thing. I'm using gun depression. I'm using the natural terrain to actually... I'll get wrecked. Absolutely kidding yourself, Batchat. How dare you bounce that? I'm using the natural terrain around me to... and get tracked. Unbelievable. To have a certain amount of armour. A certain armour presence. I.e. a building. If there's a building there, it's going to struggle to pen me. And if you just go driving out and follow everyone else and give people shots, you will take shots back. There's really no way around that. It's a tank that doesn't have an incredible armor profile, and despite wishing it, it's also got not enough pen to trade off frontally with most heavy tanks at tier 9 or tier 10. But you can see in the mobility stakes, I'm able to get around the battlefield just fine. And even in this level of gameplay, Dynasty Pearl, where there's not a tremendously large amount of open space for me to work and trade damage for distance, I'm still putting damage in. And one of the reasons I'm managing to put damage in is I'm being patient. I'm watching the map. Look at how much time I'm spending looking around and figuring things out and thinking about where my next move is and where is my next bit of solid cover that I can peek-a-boom with. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm looking for that MBT 70 over there, the KFP Z70. If he rolls on out, we'll pump him. If not, I'll take my chances with the E100. There he is. Go to APCR. Just accept the fact that APCR is what you're going to have to fire a lot in tier 10, and then move backwards and forwards. I'm in the cap. I'm forcing this guy to come out and shoot. If he doesn't come out and shoot, I'll happily cap it. We've got a tank advantage. We're going to clear this E100. Thanks for coming. Epic. Still in the cap. 38 on the cap. They've got no choice. We've now got the back of an E100. I've still not given that MBT 70 a single decent shot at me. We're now 50 in the cap. We're going to move forward again, get shots in him as he goes down to support his E100 mate, and Bob's your mother's brother. And now we're going to go down here, try and track him. We get the track, we nail him bad, we do absolutely no damage, and we don't break his track. and we are now behind him, and he's got to have a choice. Do I angle to the M46 Patton, or do I angle to the, the 183 and the Object 140? And of course, he doesn't angle to me. So the safest place for me was behind him. It really does have a lot to offer, and people don't give it enough of an opportunity. It quite often gets compared unfavorably by mid-range players, like your 50%, your 48% mark players, to tanks like the T-54. And there's a fair case for that, because in all of this, it is a tank that doesn't have a get-out-of-jail card. It doesn't have the mitigating safety net of armour. It quite simply requires you to think your way around the battlefield. And that's why I compare it so much to the Leopard 1. Because if the Leopard 1, if you get a standard kind of player who just takes the easy shot that might miss and gets spotted and is spotted for 3 seconds, a 183 will delete a Leopard 1. Well, a 183 will delete you in the M46 Patton. So you have to be very, very careful. You have to watch the map. You have to know where things can hit you from and where things can't hit you from. Let's talk about the numbers. 70 degrees of traverse when you're fully buffed out is an awful lot of traverse. Your top end speed is not as nice as you'd like. 48 kilometers an hour is certainly decent, but it is by no means a crazy number. What you do have going for you, though, is a 902 horsepower engine with a power to weight ratio of 21.11 horsepower per tonne. And that, boys and girls, is quite a fair bit. It means that you can get up and go when situations say no, 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 and you won't be left in the dust by other tanks like the T-54, for instance, which has just about the same power to weight ratio and slightly better terrain resistance numbers on medium levels of terrain. That is all well and good, but the lack of a top end speed really does hamstring you. So you're missing that top end speed. You don't have the armor. What are you getting? What is mitigating all this stuff that allows you to do damage? Well, that's gun depression. Gun depression is the magic number with this. 10 degrees of gun depression. Again, watch this T-62. I am being an absolute thorn in his side, and then I'm being incredibly patient. The 183 is unspotted at the present. I don't know where he is, so I'm going very straight on my angles to the 183. I'm resetting my camo, and then I'm just going to wait till that 62A gets spotted up again, and I'm going to push out and into him. Get another shot off, and then reset. Gun depression is the silver bullet, quite literally. By that, I mean gun depression means your effective damage per minute numbers are really, really good. Now, your DPM is every bit as good as the other tier 10 medium tanks, like the Leopard PTA and the T-54, and it's far in advance of some of your other tier 9 counterparts. Why that's so important is you also have gun depression. So you are able to hit shots that a lot of the time are not available to other tanks on your team, other peers like the T-54 or the E50. 10 degrees of gun depression means that there are very, very rarely any opportunities that you cannot take. There are only a few tanks in the game that have more than 10 degrees of gun depression. And at tier 9, I can't think of any offhand that have in excess of 10 degrees of gun depression. In fact, at tier 9 and tier 10, at these tiers, that is the god level of gun depression. And any tank that has good gun depression and a reasonable amount of DPM can manufacture an awful lot of hay. Now, that is the big negative there. That's your gun penetration is atrocious. And when you come up against really troll armor profiles like Object 704s and Object 263s and Object 268s, you just can't be in front of them. It's quite simply going to be a very, very bad day for you if you're in front of them. And you're going to see that in just a second for me. I cop a bit of a flogging from this Object 704 that I really shouldn't take. I'm trying to be a little bit aggressive here without exposing myself to a hash round, because that 183 could quite literally take all my hit points with a max roll of hash, which is a scary thought. So you've got to be very, very aware of where things are. And right now, I'm aware that there is a 183 pushing up on our 183, and that I need to keep this 704 pin. So I'm trying to get him permatracked, and I just don't have quite enough DPM to do it, or rate of fire to do it. You can see when he's getting untracked, I have about 1 second left, and that's how he gets that extra shot in. But I've turned him into a one shot, and the 183 is into a one shot. I'm going to back up and shoot him through the woodpile there and get my shot in. There we go. And now it's a one-on-one situation. Back to gun depression. So you're going to see the next game on Dead Rail. I make great use of the gun depression. And in fact, I made great use of the gun depression on Dynasty Pearl as well, and on the Port Bay map. I'm going to do something here that's a little bit sneaky. There's only a minute left when my adrenaline runs out. So what I'm trying to do is bait this guy to come around the corner, because the shoe has to basically come first before the heel. By that I mean he's got an enormously long chassis at the front of it, and if he wants to get around this 183, he's going to have to lead with his front end. And he's not doing that. He's not being a muppet, which is an altogether far too solid display of competence. So what I'm going to do is shoot. When he touches up there, I'm going to shoot, so he's got to reverse and then come back around, and then see if he will actually push around. And he does, and we're just going to get it in, and we get him. And that's like old age and treachery, always overcoming youth and skill. That's, you might have seen Vovko do that on the Batchat Master class that I had him run. Gun depression makes up for all these ills, because gun depression is just such a great way of getting shots off. Now, usually if you have gun depression, you lose damage per minute. The only caveat to that in this game seems to be if you have no armour or very, very bad armour, then you can keep your damage per minute and keep your gun depression. So we don't have the lights out pace of the Leo 1, but we've got an outstanding spotting range. The spotting range on this tank is 304 meters when you're running your optics and your rations. And that's a long way. That means you can do a lot of things. More importantly, you combine that with gun depression and you can get spots and shots. And that's what we're going to try and do here. We've pushed up on this SU-122-54. We've got someone in B. We've got someone all the way at the back. You can see in the far south west corner. And I'm trying to keep this SU-122-54 perma-spotted so the guys on my team can still get shots into him. And that's exactly what's going on. The only problem with this is it also means at some point he might just get jack of this and go for a hit point trade. If he goes for the hit point trade, then I'm going to eat damage, because he does an absolutely one of the top DPM tanks in the game, the SU-122-54, and that's exactly what the SU-101 decides he's going to do, which is just crap. Like, this is just a bad move by him. For me and for him, it means that he is going to eat an awful lot of damage. There's the 122-54. He's going to eat an awful lot of damage, and I mean, he absolutely deserves that. He didn't move off. He tried to get around and get shots, and this bloke deserves it twice. We get an unlucky bounce here on the 101, but you can see gun depression is giving me a big old hand. Thank God he missed that, because that was going to be absolutely hectic. And all I'm going to do here is maintain my angle. I'm not going to try and do anything special. I'm just going to hold this angle, and it's a scary thing to do, but I'm not actually trying to get around him or move. There we go. So I've played this within a bee's wedding tackle of all these big bad TD tanks. I've spotted them all up, and you can see I have no qualms getting shots in, because, you know, gun depression, mobility, very, very solid, easy to drive tank when you're in close proximity to the enemy with 70 degrees of traverse. It all works in my favour. And we end up getting a lot of spotting damage, a lot of plain old damage, and I was actually surprised this wasn't a this was not a mastery game. We might have actually got a bit more damage out of the Yag Panther 2 there and done very well, but I digress. We've got 3,500 damage, just about, spotted 4 tanks and 2,000 spotting damage. 12 shots fired and 12 shots hit. That's the M46 Patton in a nutshell, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you liked the review. It's a much more op-ed piece than it is a raw numbers and things kind of outlook, because to be honest, I've done reviews on this tank before in terms of the raw numbers, and they haven't really changed. What's changed is the meta, the playstyles, the big guns, the tanks that really can put the fear of God into you. So play it like a Leopard 1, but a tier 9 Leopard 1. And just pretend you're going 65 kilometers an hour, and all will be right with the world. Look after yourselves, guys. Make sure to hammer that like button, like the videos, subscribe, share the joy around, tune in for the live streams, and until next time, stay safe on the battlefield.